Hey everybody, thanks for joining me here and thanks for checking out my podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and click the notification bell for new episodes. You can also find Shine Without Shame on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. My guest today is Maya Ravel-Bailey. Maya is French and African-American born and was raised in the Bay Area. She is a meditation and sound healer at iChakras. Maya is also an aspiring designer and avid writer. Maya, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I know you and I have not known each other for that long, but we both actually work at iChakras, working with meditation and sound healing and chakra work. And you've been working there much longer than I have, but it's been a really fun opportunity to meet like-minded people from all different backgrounds, of course, but who are interested in different aspects of healing work. And I appreciate that I'm a part of your community there.
Absolutely. And I love working there and everything that I do there. Everything. It's such a blessing in my life, truly.
You seem like it's just second nature to you to do that work.
It feels like second nature in a way because I have always, I think, aspired to raise the vibrational frequency of my consciousness. From a young age, I just felt like I kind of was maturing faster, and my mental understanding was a lot more advanced than my peers. And as I got older, I realized that I just had a niche in meditation, in the ability to calm the mind and control it a little bit. Of course, I'm not perfect, nobody's perfect, but my ability to do that allowed me to help others. And I really enjoy guiding people through meditation and helping people come back to themselves and realize that, all of our problems, everything that happens in the world, it's kind of like a stage. We're all actors, and we are not actually our bodies. We are not even our feelings or emotions. We are the one experiencing them. So I definitely enjoy that process and working with people and just guiding people through healing energies.
I hear that.
And for me, also, the most powerful thing is seeing how people's own personal experience then becomes, their proof that energy healing is real.
That's right. It's grounded in their reality.
It's not something you can teach. It's something you can lead them to, and they experience it for themselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
I appreciate that explanation. Well, thanks again. I'm looking forward to our conversation. I, as you know, started this podcast a couple of years ago to look at shame and talk about it and explore how it gets in our way. For the most part, it seems, my experience and what I've witnessed and observed, gets in the way of being our best selves and really being able to shine and not feel badly if we're not perfect, but also not feel badly for the gifts that we have to offer. And so I wanted to explore that with people, the idea of letting go of shame. And there are some people who actually don't agree with me. They think like maybe some of them are in the counseling therapy area of work, and not every therapist I've spoken to, but some have told me, I don't think shame is good at all, ever, never. And I only once in a while will talk about the idea of shame being useful, maybe for something that's really serious, like someone did something egregious or committed a crime, or their behavior was so dangerous to themselves and others that part of their process maybe of acknowledging or taking account for their actions is to experience a bit of shame. That may be the only time I think when it can be useful, when it's something that's major in life. But for the most part, I don't think that the everyday idea of feeling shamed or being shamed is helpful to us. And I also just really love to explore the concept of shining, the idea that we all have our own gifts, our own set of unique abilities and talents that we can contribute to the world, and that we don't need to compare or compete with others. Although that is such a common, we've all fallen, I
Mhm.
believe, into that uh, frame of mind of comparing ourselves, even if it's very quietly or secretly, to other people. And it's like, it's impossible to ever really compare yourself to someone else. No one else, no other human will ever and can ever have the same experience as you, given their background, given their genetics, given their own special abilities and their own gifts. And so I wanted to explore that as well. Like, well, how can we just be good with the idea of that we've all got something to offer? We've all got our contributions to make. We don't need to worry about comparing ourselves to others or feeling badly when we think of when we watch others shine in the world. We have the same opportunity to do that as well for ourselves, not from a place of ego, but from a place of just truly expressing our most noble selves. So I like to share every once in a while the purpose of the podcast and what inspired me. And I thought I would ask you what your experience has been with shame, and whatever you'd like to share, personal, however deep, however personal. But if you want to even think back to your earliest memory, maybe, of shame, if you're able to share that, that would be a
Mhm.
great starting place.
Well, I definitely want to, touch on the fact about what you were saying about shame being useful at certain times. I think, we all have a conscious, and sometimes, our minds can think and do weird things, and it's about whether we're acting on that. And sometimes we act on a poor conscious. And in those moments, the shame is appropriate because that's a real emotion. Um, and like in my opinion, shame is a tool. It can be a tool to teach you about what you're doing. It's out of alignment with where you actually can be. Shame is actually a low vibrational emotion, and it takes you away from where you can be. Um, so, in my opinion, shame is a tool. But when you're young, you're not aware of that. You don't even really understand what shame is. And that's where I think that our shame starts, is in our early childhood, when we are, learning from our caretakers and our peers about our own personal behaviors, because we're learning about the world by interacting with it. And so we then begin to process and learn about our interactions. And sometimes something that shouldn't necessarily be shameful, we understood as shameful. And sometimes that shame can be ourselves, how we are and who we are becomes shameful because we might be different from our culture and our parents and want to express that, and they don't agree. And so we then begin to um, correlate ourselves with a shameful experience, which is painful, and we hide ourselves. So I have a lot of early experiences with shame, but I would say that the strongest one was probably just being ashamed of who I was, even though I didn't do anything or am not inherently wrong. I was just ashamed of myself. I was embarrassed of who I was, and that would translate into pretending to be somebody I wasn't and doing things that were out of character because I wanted to be liked and perceived as good by others. Because deep down, I knew I was good, but my own personal impulses and instincts were not getting the reactions that I thought that I should be getting for who I was. So it's just like a very complicated and difficult dynamic that was created. where then I started to seek validation outside of myself for who I was, and to kind of get an okay on who I was and what I was doing. So that actually manifested as living an inauthentic life, just super painful, because I didn't have friends that loved me for me. I had friends who loved me for who I was portraying myself to be. And then I would try to compensate for that, trying to win or buy other people's love for me through things that I would do for them, which should have just been a natural thing in a friendship if it was truly rooted in something real. So I think that came from my inherent self-shame. And for example, my hair, I spent years straightening my hair, and it all started when, I was having a lot of difficulties with my hair. My mother has straight hair. She's a white woman, so she's not cultured in Black hair. So she never really understood how to take care of my hair. So I would oftentimes have a lot of knots, and it was just chaotic. And so one day she took me to the hairdresser, and the hairdresser proposed to do a treatment. And I agreed. And from that time, from 7th grade all the way till I was 19, I straightened my hair, and I loved having straight hair. I thought it made me look beautiful, and I felt better with straight hair. Even to this day, I still feel and look better with straight hair. When I have straight hair, I'm a different person. But it's expensive. It's not the hair I was born with. And it actually goes hand in hand with that side of me that is ashamed of my curls. And so I had to grow and learn. But through embracing my curls came embracing myself in an interesting way. Yeah.
And if you want to say more about that next phase of embracing
Myself.
yourself and how that manifested through your hair or any other way, that would be really, I think the audience would find that interesting.
Yeah. So because I was seeking validation outside of myself, I was always looking at myself through the eyes of another, and oftentimes wondering how I looked in the eyes of a potential romantic partner. And I didn't think that, I would be liked for having curly hair. I just didn't really have that many peers either that had natural hair. And even the girls that I did know who are African American that have natural hair, we were straightening it or, covering it as well. Which is fine, we're allowed to do whatever we want with our hair. But I think when you're doing what you want with your hair out of love, and because you want to shine and you want to embrace different sides of yourself, that's when, you're embracing your hair and doing what you want with your hair. That's actually going to help you. But when you're doing that to your hair because you're embarrassed and it's associated with negative emotions, even if it's deep down, even if you don't realize it, that's when you're building upon that shame, which then will come up later and be really intense. So the way that I embraced my hair was just, I don't even know how to explain that.
Was there someone that made you, that said something or just reflected something to you that?
I think I started dating someone who really liked my curly hair. And so the fact that they liked my curly hair, I was like, oh, well, I guess I like my curly hair too then, and I'll try it since they like me with curly hair. But then again, here I am doing something for somebody else, but that person did help me embrace it a little bit more because they loved it so much. And I also noticed that my hair was damaged, and I was like, I don't like damaged hair. So I cut it and I started growing it back out, and I just realized that my hair can be very beautiful, curly. So, but I feel like me embracing who I am wasn't through the curls necessarily. I embraced who I was in a different way, and allowing my curls to shine was a an effect of me embracing myself. Because, like I was saying in the beginning, I dealt with a lot of shame. And it wasn't just my hair, it was just me as a person. So it really comes down to, how did I accept myself as a person, as a being, as a human being? And it's actually very interesting and a very long journey. Very, very long journey. One that a lot of people experience as well, that leads to depression and, messing around with substances. I don't know, maybe not go into that, but doing things that hurt you, little things that hurt you, the way you eat, the way you look at yourself in the mirror, the narrative you tell yourself. Those are all things that I did that hurt me. And to be completely honest, out of everything that I tried in the self-love and self-acceptance, wasn't enough until I stopped looking at myself through the eyes of others. It was brought to my attention that human beings are flawed. A lot of my shame came from the fact that I perceived everybody to be better than me. I put everyone on a pedestal, and I was just inferior to everyone, and I had to be like them, even if it was like the worst person. But when I realized I was looking at myself through other people who were imperfect, that was a saving grace. And then on top of that, to realize that I am also so imperfect that looking at myself through my own eyes is another flawed perspective. And around that time, even though I was always very connected to the divine, I had come much closer to God and in my faith, which is a big part of myself. But when I looked at myself through the eyes of God is when all of the chains broke. Truly. I can't make this up. And it's a very difficult thing to conceptualize, but I just gave it my best shot. And I looked at myself through the eyes of the creator of the entire universe. And that made me realize that I am perfect in my imperfections. And I want to embrace my imperfections. I want to be authentic. And my authenticity comes from admitting and not being perfect and being okay with not being perfect. So that's what I would say would be the saving grace was stop trying and just be human. Mm-hmm.
Yes. It is a profound journey. We're all on a journey of, essentially, in my understanding, of evolution. But we do get distracted. We do take detours. We do get stuck in traffic. If we want to stick with that metaphor,
Mm-hmm.
but ultimately we're created to move forward, to evolve, to progress in our own unique way. But also, I think there's a collective process that
Mm-hmm.
is a part of our reality here on planet Earth. It's something that I don't think are collectively fully aware of. We haven't embraced this idea necessarily as a truth. There are parts of humanity that have accepted that and that have been accepting that forever. This idea of evolution, and it seems like to me that is, and you've just illustrated how that was such an important part of your journey, because we all struggle and we all have our challenges, that no one's immune from that. But the idea that we can either look at ourselves, like you said, through the eyes of other people who are not perfect, or we can pivot a different way and look through the eyes of the creator, something that is greater than us, that is perfect, and that
Mhm.
isn't judging us, that isn't using like unfair or, just weird uh
Right,
measurements.
because humans, love is a huge word. A lot of things fall into love, and other people's understanding and meaning of love and the way they express love. So one might love another, but show that love in a very toxic way. And so that's why, when you look at yourself through the eyes of the creator, that love is like such an unconditional love. It doesn't come with the human love conditions. It's unconditional.
That's right. And it's a major
Hmm.
awareness to gain.
Yes.
And I think that some people are definitely open to that. They're oriented to that idea, and others, because of all kinds of history with shame or with
Hmm.
just an orientation or an education, like informal education I'm talking about, that we inherit, that there is that this life is really not about love, that it's about pain and suffering. That is a program or a mentality for
Hmm.
some people, and they're not even necessarily aware of that, but they do hold that as something they value, and then they pass that on to maybe
Hmm.
their children. That's like a totally different programming, or a different view of reality, of our reality here. And so I think it's very powerful to hear someone like
Hmm.
yourself, who's able to say, look, this you can articulate. You're being very specific too. You're not just, being vague, or you're very clear about what your journey has been, and where you started, and kind of where you're at, and how this idea of recognizing something greater than you that isn't going to judge you for being imperfect, uh,
Right.
is how that has transformed your life. You said that was your saving grace. And I guess what I want to encourage people is not that they have to, follow a religion, or do do something very specific in terms of a spiritual walk that doesn't feel authentic to them. But it seems like there has to be some willingness and awareness that of searching for something that we can trust and rely on day in and day out, where we feel that love, where we don't feel judged, and where we feel like there's room, right, to like grow and to evolve. And
Hmm.
I think that journey can look so different for people, but it seems like to me, that seems like that is essential,
It's
because
essential.
I otherwise that shame, or that feeling of being unworthy or not good enough, what
Hmm.
takes it away? I know we do use substances, or we not even just substances, but we involve ourselves in actions or behaviors that just really aren't
Yeah.
beneficial. It's like, but I think we have to
I
ask
want to elaborate
ourselves.
that on, actually, because by substances, it can be a wide range of things. It can be from food to shopping to um, the way, you interact with people at work. It can look like a lot of things. It's like what we do to compensate in that moment for our lack. That
Yes.
feeling of lack, I am not enough in this moment and I cannot bear this pain. And so I'm going to substitute this pain or cover it up with whatever it is.
Yes. And I don't mean to be trite, because I understand that for some people, if there is a genetic component, that you've inherited, say alcoholism or some other chemical addiction, I mean, that
Predisposition.
there's
Mhm.
something that it's not just as easy as waking up, and saying, I'm going to stop that because it's not helping me. I mean, there are physiological reasons why you believe it helps you and why there's a dependence, and sometimes it is inherited. So I don't at all want to make it seem, and I'm saying this based on what I've shared here, I don't, I want to be clear that I don't think that for everyone, it's as easy as just rolling over one day and saying, I'm done with that. For some people, maybe it can, that is a part of their reality. For others, I mean, we're talking about history. We're talking about genetic history and a predisposition. That's hard work. That's real work. That in and of itself could be someone's whole lifetime, right? Of overcoming that sort of challenge. But I do appreciate so much the idea of the grace and that connection to something where we can just lay it all down and just say, I'm not perfect, but I do want to be loved and I do want to know I'm worthy. I just don't think we can find that in others. We have others in our lives who can support us, who are maybe also operating from a higher place of consciousness.
Definitely.
But we are the ones who have to internally accept or embrace
Yeah, and it's
our,
so interesting. Like, I can't help for this to like fall into, my faith and stuff. I'm not a religious person, but the way that that realization liberated me was very profound. And I really find that the the laying out, like, that space that you create for yourself then to thrive in, I wouldn't have been able to do it on my own because I did do it on my own. I did not know God at all my entire life. I didn't even think about the word God until I was 20. That was not something in my life. That was not something in my family, in my community at all. And so I find that really interesting that I really discovered this by myself. So that kind of is what makes my experience a little bit unique as well, because I'm a meditative, and that's where I kind of had that realization as well. But when I started to get to know myself and look at myself through the eyes of God, I started to think, how can I love myself? Like, God started teaching me how to love myself through myself. And I know that sounds really crazy in a lot of ways and complicated and hard to grasp on. Like, how can something so big and so vast and non-tangible work through me to teach me how to love myself? But that's why I have faith in it, because of the way it did liberate me, the way I did lay out all of my shame, all of the things that I was ashamed of and hurt by and just trapped in, all of that, all of it. I kind of just laid it all out, and I just admitted to myself, like, wow, I have just suffered so much in so many ways, of my own doing, of other people's doing. I've hurt myself over and over again. I've hurt others, but I didn't know any better. And I don't want to be bound to this pain and suffering anymore. But I could not release all of that, get rid of all of that pain and suffering and shame that I was living and breathing in without God. I have to be honest. That was the turning point for me. And I went through years of therapy. I even went to rehabilitation center to kind of understand what the heck was going on in my mind. I went on antidepressants. I was so depressed because of the way my mind was speaking to me, the way I was understanding the world was super toxic. So, and all that stuff was very helpful. The therapy, the medication to literally help me live in society and not fall off the wagon. All of those things are very real and very helpful, but it wasn't the turning point. It wasn't enough. It wasn't the thing that truly liberated me, where that now I am a whole other person. I am very okay with being myself and shining without shame because of of that release because of what was given to me in exchange of my admittance to just how much I was suffering, just how much pain I was in, and just how much I did not want to be in pain anymore. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. So personal and so profound. So personal yet so relatable, I think. That's what I mean. It's like the macro micro of life here.
Mhm.
And I do find it so interesting to hear you articulate this process and this awareness and realization for yourself, because I'm sure there are many people who listen or who will listen to this and who aren't religious but don't
Mhm.
understand how they could have a relationship with God and not be religious. And I think that that is an important example to share. So I appreciate you. I know it's just
Mhm.
coming from your own authentic experience,
Right. And
but
for
I
me, I want people to know this, like, share this experience with me, but in a non religious way. Through my meditation, I've learned that we can share an experience and it's going to be personal. And I want it to be personal. I want your understanding of God to be your own. I want you to realize that the proof that you need is going to come from within through your own personal experience. I can't give it to you. I can't teach you no matter what I say. It won't be enough. It has to be between you and God. That's what I truly feel. And I think that also kind of takes the pressure off a little bit that there's no
yes.
right or wrong way to do it because it really is a personal journey.
Yes, yes, Maya. I couldn't agree more. I think that the personal part of it is what's is the reality. It's
Mhm. And
because
also, that doesn't magically make me a better person or free from shame. For example, yesterday, this past week has been incredibly difficult for me. Um, and I have been experiencing some shame. I have been reliving some old patterns that I had before I had that turning point I shared with you earlier. And that shame was creeping up on me. I was feeling shameful. That was just like the underlining feeling, but it was because my monkey mind was talking and yapping at me and telling me things and making me feel insecure. And so just because I have God doesn't, and I had those experiences doesn't free me from what my mind can do and the feelings that I can experience. What's different now is how I face my battles. It's how I overcome the voice in my head that wants to take me down or break me. It's how I I overcome it. And because God showed me a different way of living, a different way of loving myself, I can now face this pain and suffering in a different manner where I don't have to take it all on my shoulders for me to magically just make myself feel better in a moment. It's just taught me to have compassion for myself, to love myself. I'm a human being. You are a human being. We have bad days and you're going to feel down and it will be dark and it can be dark. But the depth of our pain, the deeper the wound the knife can cut, the deeper the love can fill. That radical self love can fill all of that. So I don't think we should be afraid of deep emotions and deep pain and deep feelings because that actually becomes our teacher if we allow it to be. And we also think that we should be in these like amazing states all the time of joy and light. But that's also not a reality because our emotions swing. Life is constantly changing. As a meditative, the goal actually is to just be centered and aligned. You're not actually feeling sorrow or joy. You're feeling nothing, but you're in contentment. And that's actually what I wanted to go back into, which I think is a great place to start for people um, who want to overcome shame is gratitude. remembering what we're grateful for. And sometimes when we're in a situation where we're dealing with difficult things that bring us down and we don't really know how to face those challenges, I have found that bringing gratitude to the very thing that's making me feel down has helped me overcome it. Being grateful and truly bringing a sense of gratitude. And a gratitude needs to be practiced. Okay. It's not something that comes naturally for us. But if we get in the habit of being grateful for the things that we have in our lives already, will show us that the little things that can then become big things are just little things. We have our life. We don't have to try to open our eyes in the morning or breathe. That is something that is given to us, regardless of any other circumstance you may be facing in your life. That is the true blessing, that your breath is you, and your breath is also, you don't, that's a blessing in itself. And the hours you have in a day, those are yours, and you do what you want with it. And the way you think is going to affect the way you feel, and the way you feel is going to affect the way you move, and the way you move is going to affect what you manifest and how you manifest into your life. So, yeah.
That's beautiful. And I think that you were bringing in a thread that I was going to bring in as well, is this idea of practice. So I think that there's so much to do with semantics and people's own relationship to religion and to God, that for some people has just created so much just pain and disconnect that they just have nothing to do with that,
Right.
those ideas. I completely respect that and understand it.
Totally.
But I think there's an opportunity, and in this conversation, I think we're talking about this a little bit. There's an opportunity to create something for yourself that feels authentic. If you don't already have a religion or a spiritual path that you're walking on, there's an opportunity to create something for yourself that feels authentic, that feels safe, and that is some sort of practice that you do daily. And you've talked about meditation as a practice.
And I really like what you say there about authentic and genuine. Very important, because if you're trying to do affirmations for yourself to help yourself, if you don't love yourself and you're telling yourself, I love myself, that does more pain and puts you further back from loving yourself than starting with one. Okay, I might hate myself. Okay, I'm gonna admit I hate myself, but I want to love myself. And I love my fingernail color. That's better. That's an authentic statement and worthwhile so much more than saying I love myself when genuinely you hate yourself.
Well said. And yes, and I think starting from some place, the smallest effort of, like you said, acknowledging, being grateful, or acknowledging one thing that you value or appreciate or love about yourself. That is certainly an authentic place to start. And then when you build that into a daily practice or habit or routine, but not something that feels rigid necessarily, but just something you can turn to every day, that is my understanding of the whole purpose of religion. And I'm not here to promote religion, but the essence of religion was so that people didn't have to wake up every day and create a whole new process. There was a process in place for prayer and meditation and fasting. But obviously, what's happened over the history of our civilization, religion has been used in oppressive and inappropriate
Absolutely.
ways. But the essence, the reason why religion has existed, in my understanding, was so that we had spiritual paths to walk on, and we didn't have to make anything up for ourselves. It was like the framework was there. But given the reality that there are so many people who are just want to have nothing to do with religion, which I honor that desire, I do want to encourage people to find something that they can turn to every day. And Maya has, offered the idea of waking up and offering gratitude for something in your life, or just finding one thing that you genuinely love about yourself, one little thing. And then you can build on that. It can become a more even a more robust kind of practice as you discover that for yourself. But I think that some sort of daily practice is essential, because otherwise, where do you put where do you call yourself to account? Calling yourself to account every day for the things that you're doing well and for the things that you need to work on. That's a practice, right? And meditation is a practice. These are simple but powerful, and I believe they're part of our nature. We need these tools and these resources. Otherwise, that toxicity or that negativity or just the feeling of like, oh, the world is weighing me down, the world is crushing me. You've got to find a way so that you don't feel crushed day in and day out. And I think that, and I just want to encourage people to find, if they don't already have, some sort of practice, some sort of path, kind of daily path that they walk on of mindfulness. It could be a walking meditation, anything, to start somewhere and know that, right, you're never going to be perfect. No one's perfect. But as we develop the ability, or the habit of calling ourselves to account, meaning what we've done well, where we need to still work on things, where we allow ourselves to acknowledge and offer gratitude, that will start to make life just a little easier. And then there's the real, like you were talking about, the true like healing therapy, rehabilitation tools that some of us need. We need that because we can't do it alone. And I've shared here on the podcast, meditation for me was I didn't like it. I loathed it in the beginning. And I learned why I loathed it was because I was willing to sit with myself. I was willing to go inside and take a look. And then I realized, I don't love everything that's here. And so it was a new awareness of what was inside of me. It wasn't that the meditation itself was bad or causing me problems. It just got me clear about what's inside. I was able to do that and not switch off or check out or tune out what was there. I was actually willing and able to look at it. That takes some courage to do, because everyone's going to find a little something there that they're not thrilled with. But once you acknowledge it and kind of shine the light on it, and then start to like take it out, release it, it does lighten the burden. I can say that from experience.
Yeah, that's what I call
over many
contrast.
Contrast. Say more about that.
Yeah, the contrast of your experience when you, for example, just a quick, simple example, when you are feeling in a good place, you're having a great day, and somebody comes and, flips you off and curses at you because you turned the wrong way on the street. That contrast, for example, shows you where you're at and where that other emotion is at. What I'm trying to say is the contrast shows us where we are versus another thing. So if I'm in a good state and I'm facing an emotion that's really dark and depressing, that brings me down, that contrast shows me where I can be actually. I can be in that depressing and darkness, or I can strive to be in my joy and my love and my light.
Yes. And what you're saying also makes me think of the inverse. In other words, we can be in our state of grace and be centered and be grounded. And then someone does something or says something, even if it could be, out on the road, or it could be in like a coworker or someone in our immediate realm. And they say something or do something that is just in such contrast to truth. This isn't about judging people. I'm just saying it's about being aware of, okay, if I'm grounded in truth, I'm not perfect, but I desire to find truth in every moment of my life. And someone or something presents that contrast that isn't actually in line with truth. It's good to get clear about that. Again, it's not about judging people, but we have to start to trust when we are in the light, so to speak, or when we are in truth. And again, with our imperfections and all, we can still be aware of truth and follow it and then be aware when we're being presented with something that is not in light of truth. I think that's also really important in terms of what you were sharing, this idea of contrast, and that we develop that ability. I think it gets stronger as you're able to trust. And for me, that means I rely on something greater than me. And I do walk a specific spiritual religious path. So I use like the teachings of my religion or the principles to guide me. Whatever it is, though, whether or not you're on a religious path or not, we all know what's right and what's good. It can get complicated.
It's so much more
Situations can get-
powerful to genuinely be genuine and love yourself. I don't care how you do it, but to actually genuinely love yourself is a very real experience and takes a lot to get there. So I don't really care how people get to that, because getting to true self-love in itself is a huge deal, in my opinion, because of, like you said, the history and our society. So if it's genuine, it doesn't matter because it's genuine. I don't need to, you don't need to explain it. It just is. You don't need to strive for it. It just is. And so how you get